warm welcome to all of you here present at ChangeNOW. Please put your headphones on so you can hear what's going on up here on stage. And a warm welcome to all of you watching this online. I'm Catarina Rolfsdotter-Jansson. I am a journalist, expert moderator, and also an EU Climate Pact ambassador. And I'm delighted to be here to facilitate the start of this event. We are here to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the landmark Paris Climate Agreement. It was built on the backs of tens of thousands of scientists. It was convened by the United Nations, and it was chosen by all of our governments. And yet now, science is under threat. Science is being pushed back. In the past, some powerful organizations from representing the oil and gas lobbying, they pushed back, they denied climate science. They used disinformation and covert lobbying to really sow seeds of doubt about climate change and climate science. And they did this in order to slow down the transition and to make things not really happen fast enough indeed. After that, they, together with denier politicians, they muddied the waters. They moved to accept climate change, but they kept on delaying climate change. It's climate science and hence not the climate action happening fast enough. And they also overestimated the cost of this climate transition. And they also, of course, did all sorts of things to make this slow down. And now we are confronted in the second term of the United States President Donald Trump. We are confronted with cancel science culture. This is a word that we really need to focus on, learn more about. Cancel science culture. And this is what we're going to talk about at this event. We have fantastic experts lined up. We will dig deeper into this. And before we move to the panel, we have an exciting announcement here on stage. It's my pleasure to introduce the founder and CEO of We Don't Have Time, Ingmar Rentzhog, for a special announcement that all of you can join in. So enjoy, take action.
Thank you, Catarina. I used to work in the finance industry, where I was head of one of the largest investor relation firms in the Nordic. But I'm not doing that anymore, because when I became a father myself, I realized that I wanted to use my skills in communication to protect our future instead. And I'm not alone in that. According to a UN study, more than 80% of people globally want stronger climate action from their leaders. Still, we don't see enough change. How come? Because there exist some powers, some special interests that are working against change. And for many years, they have tried to deny the problem. That is not really working anymore, because everyone can feel the heat when they go outside. So they changed tactics and started to delay climate action instead. That is also not working so good anymore, because we here are scaling the solution at unprecedented scale. So they are now leveling up their game by starting to cancel science itself. And I have an example. This is the observatory in Mauna Loa. It has been measuring carbon dioxide in the atmosphere every single day since the 1960s. And last week, we were at record high, never happened before, 440 ppm. That is very much room for concern. We should have an emergency in UN. What are the new US administration doing about this? They try to cancel the observatory by ending the land lease to it, so we lose the data instead. That's crazy. And it's not only in US that science are under attack. In Europe, German far-right AfD threatens to tear down all wind turbines, to just close them. Why is that? Why is this happening? It's happening because one reason, and that is fossil fuel interests are starting to lose. In Europe, last year, renewables were outpacing fossil fuel. And it's not going to grow bigger fossil fuel. It's only going to lose more. And in US, 96% of all new electricity power produced last year were fossil-free. And it's unprecedented speed. You have all seen the exponential curves. New solar, EV, battery is going exponentially. So this is very positive. And scientists know how fast things go when it goes exponential. But for everyone else, I want to give an example of how fast exponential change actually feels. In 2004, it took the year to build 1 gigawatt of solar power a year. In 2010, it took under a month. In 2015, it took just a week. In 2023, it took a day. Last year, it took an hour. This is the speed of the green transition. This is what they are afraid of. They're afraid of losing. And it will have a lot of consequences. For example, when we go fossil-free, if we switch to renewable energy, the number of ships crossing the ocean will fall almost in half, because they're just transporting oil, coal, and gas. So if you're on the wrong side in business, you will be a loser. And some losers, they try everything to protect their position instead of change. And this action is also getting results that we want. In EU 2023, after the pandemic, emissions were falling down with 8%. That's very good news. And in China, it hasn't fallen down yet, but it's starting to flat out. And the economy are growing. So we can scale down the emission and grow the economy. But we need more, because according to science, we need to cut the emission in half every decade. And flattening out is not good enough. So why is this not happening? I am totally convinced it's not happening because we don't want it to happen. It's happening because some interests are fighting against change. If we remove them fighting against change, we will do this curve, no problem. And what have been on their side have actually been some scientist community. I'm talking about an example here, Harvard University. 5 years ago, there was big rebellion on their campus because they thought, the students thought it was a very bad idea to teach climate science, that we need to transition away from fossil fuel, while their own university are spending their money investing in fossil fuel. This is a campaign we ran that we don't have time. And the good news, Harvard listened. So they divested from fossil fuel. They don't do that anymore. And that's why they are on the shit list of the US administration currently, trying to shut them down. And Harvard are taking that fight, and we are here to make them win. So this is what we don't have time to do. We are the world's largest media platform for climate action. Our job is to scale the action out there and get more people on board. We want to democratize knowledge about climate solutions. And on our platform, we have today 120,000 climate professionals working to drive change every day. They work together with more than 400 organizations, companies, and civil society organizations. And in order to push it out there to those not yet on board, we are broadcasting to more than 10 million people every single month. And it's the important people that are using our platform. It's media, it's policymakers, it's climate influencers, it's scientists, business leaders. Those are the people helping scaling the action. And I want to ask this audience, how many of you here have seen this picture of Greta Thunberg? This was We Don't Have Time photographer. It's the first picture taken of Greta Thunberg ever. We helped that message go viral to the world. We didn't do the action. We just make sure that more people know about it. Greta did action. And now everyone knows that we are in a climate crisis. So this is how we can create wave with communication. And what we need to do now is that we need to do something similar by making science great again. And how are we going to do that? First, we need to defend science. Wherever it's under attack, we need to tell that story. The observatory in Mauna Loa is not yet closed. Let's make millions of people fight for keeping it open. We will win that fight if we do it before it closes. If we only read mainstream media, they will report about it after it has closed and the fight is lost. So we need to defend science wherever it's attacked. But we also need to amplify the science we need. For example, how many here knows that we can cool the planet by 0.5 degrees quite fast if we limit emission of short-lived climate gases? That is an example of solution. We need more people on board and educate, especially the policymakers, because they don't know about the solution enough. And lastly, we also need to have dialogue with those that we don't agree with. That's very important, because that's how we can move things forward. We can't just cancel what we don't like out. And what we have been doing successfully in real time is to put corporates and political leaders, have a dialogue with them and ask them why are they talking about science and not following the science. One example is that we had a dialogue with the largest pension fund in Sweden because they invested in Saudi Aramco oil. They were one of the largest investors in Saudi Aramco oil. So we put them online, we asked them why, and 2 months later they didn't have so good arguments because they sold that. So you can create change with dialogue. But this will only work if you help us. So we need you. We need everyone to help us. So you can scan this QR code, and we need two things to succeed with this. We need a lot of people engaging with their time, and we need some money. If we get that, we will make sure that the special interest will not win the third time either. So warmly welcome and join us. And if you join us, you can also get a cap.
Thank you so much, Ingmar Rentzhog. I'm just now delighted to hand over to my dear colleague Nick Nuttall to moderate this panel with experts that will talk more about how we can man up here in the global community.
Man and woman up. Okay, let's bring this wonderful panel onto the stage. Gentlemen and ladies, please, it's like EasyJet, it's free seating. Please come on board, come on down. Super. All right. Thanks very much. Well done, Ingmar. That was great. I'd like to call on our first guest, who is busy organizing her hat. And this is Sandrine Dixon-de Clèves. She's the former chair of the Club of Rome, an author and executive chair of the Earth for All Landmark Report. Sandrine, I don't really have to give you a prompt to talk about this, but why do we actually need a campaign like Make Science Great Again? What do we need to do? What is your perspective of what's happening?
So thank you, Nick. And first of all, can I thank Ingmar? And also, we don't have time. Do I need to...
You need a handheld microphone.
I do need a handheld microphone. There we go. Is that better? Okay. Listen, people. I think the reality is that we are facing the greatest cancel culture that we have ever faced since the fascism that we saw of the Third Reich. And we need to be very careful. This goes very, very fast. In January, with We Don't Have Time, several scientists, including myself, with Johan Rockström, brought forward the prominence of science once again at the top of Davos, saying we cannot cancel science. Science gives us meaning. Knowledge is power. And that is fundamental. Let's not forget that. There is a reason why some people who are in power today, whether it be fossil fuel companies or whether it be certain leaders, want to cancel any knowledge that we have. We already see that in the United States, for example, 50% of citizens have a literacy rate of 6th grade. Do we want to become like that? Because we will if we do not enable continuous knowledge to circulate. But let's be very clear when it comes to climate change. The fact of the matter is that we are on a full-on assault here in Europe at the same time. We are right now defending an omnibus bill that is talking about reporting requirements, the CSDD, the CSD, the CSRD, and the taxonomy that for the first time linked up science with criteria for green projects in the European Green Deal. Who are the ones that are trying to cancel that as fast as possible? American multinationals. Because if they're able to stop European standardization in the area of climate science and environmental science, then they're able to make sure that their goods and products will continue to go onto European markets. And so let me bring in the last point. We have to remember that our institutional structures at the European level through the 90s and 2000, because I participated in the body of environmental legislation, has been built on sound science. But today in the European Parliament, there are discussions of eradicating that type of knowledge in a variety of different ways. This is not only hard sciences, it's also social sciences. So that is why myself and Johan Rockström, Christiana Figueres, and others called for also reform of the international institutions to ensure that science is anchored in all decision-making. You wouldn't believe this, but at the COPs, which Nick has participated in so many ways, we do not have continuous science integration in the decision-making. So it can go very fast. And that is why this campaign is absolutely fundamental. If we are complacent, we are complicit. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Sandrine. We are very honored to have with us Dr. Antoine Triller. He's with the French Academy of Sciences, and also he's research director for the Institut National de la Santé et de la Recherche Médicale. If you don't speak French, then you have no idea what that means. But obviously, I clearly do very fluently. Antoine, Dr. Triller, this cancelling of science in the USA has triggered quite a reaction from the French Academy of Sciences and scientific academies worldwide. That's great. But you, Dr. Triller, you're especially worried about the impact of the cancelling or cutting of the funding of the US overseas aid budget, USAID, on centers in developing and poorer countries that monitor for the emergence or the re-emergence of diseases, pandemics potentially, some of which, of course, might be linked with climate change affecting that factor. Can you please enlighten us about your concerns here? Thank you.
Yes, first, I'm not a very good communicant, so you will forgive me. I'll do my best. I'm a scientist. I just want to share with you a news from yesterday, which struck me. Seturaman Pachatnathan, he's the chairman, the director of the National Science Foundation. He resigned because of 50% cut in budget. He resigned yesterday. And this is a very, very important sign, I think, on the aggressivity of the Trump administration on science. And this is linked exactly to what you've said just before. I mean, there is a cancellation of truth. I want to come back to another point before I start rapidly on this issue of epidemic. Which is, I think, that there is a kind of, science is an ecosystem. When you start pulling somewhere, you are killing the whole ecosystem. And in fact, there is such a link, such strong links between science everywhere, between Europe and the States, that what we see is really something which is destroying a complete ecosystem. And, it is also challenging academic freedom. What I'm fearing is a contamination of this attitude over academic freedom that may reach all the other countries. And concerning one point which is related to the climate change, there is also the issue on data banks. The issue on data banks is one of the most critical issues that we are facing today. Because indeed, what are in the data banks are in fact data coming from many countries. It's not only American, and it does not belong to the place where the computer is, where the center of the data are. I mean, they belong to the whole community which have been feeding their own data in the computer. So I think there is something here which is absolutely frightening. Now let's come back to the point that was raised just before. You know that there are in many countries, in Africa, in East Asia, in the Caribbean island, there are centers, research centers, which are funded by money coming from different sources, from Europe, but also from USAID, from WHO, from many sources of fundings. And the fact that some sources are now lacking, the one coming from USAID, you already know that Trump just decided to quit WHO. This will create a terrible situation in two instances. Both, first, in public security, because indeed these centers are controlling the emergence of new disease or ancient disease. And if these diseases, which are increasing with global warming, are not controlled anymore, there are two issues. First, local populations, which are not followed the way they should be. And second, the propagation of the disease and the emergence of new epidemic. And we know very well that there will be new epidemic like AIDS at one time, like COVID later on, like chikungunya today, and few others that are under scrutiny. The other point is that these centers have to find money to secure the funding, to secure the fact that they have people working there, to secure the data, the bank of germs that they are keeping. And this has a very high cost. And so they are going to try to find money elsewhere. And who is going to enter into the funding system? These are the BRICS. And this make a big change in the global economy on which we are relying today. And the BRICS are fine, okay, why not? But the Chinese are going to fund, but the Russian as well, but the Iranian, why not? And this is this raises another issue of security, because indeed rogue states can enter into the system and go and try to put their hands on the banks of germs that may be very dangerous. And there is also biosecurity problems related to bioterrorism that may raise from that situation. So it's a very, very difficult moment that we are facing today. There are also charities, indeed. I try not to forget the charities which are involved in trying to fund. But it will not be. We will not be able. We are losing the control because of that, and losing the control is one of the most threatening aspect, I think, of it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much indeed. That's a very fresh perspective on this cancel culture of science that's happening through the removal of US funding. I'm going to come to Emilie Steinmark. She's the Economist's science correspondent. And she was also formerly part of its United States news desk. So that's kind of an interesting perspective. You know, you're a science correspondent. Also, you were covering the US. Emilie, maybe just briefly, I mean, what do you think is happening here from your perspective? I mean, it is really quite a development. And what kind of mindset do you think, or do colleagues think, is happening that leads the world's richest economy, or maybe still the world's richest economy, away from the scientific principle, which underpinned like the economic growth, like from the beginning, since Benjamin Franklin was knocking around? Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, I think there are two things here at play. I mean, there's the climate skepticism, which has been going on for a while, and America is not the only place in the world where that happens. But I think, and I think, as we've already heard, like that is influenced by large lobby organizations and industry. I mean, we've seen it with tobacco, we've seen it with certain kinds of foods, we see it with the petrochemical industry. But I think what is happening at the moment is a real strong dose of anti-intellectualism. So that hits science more broadly. It obviously also hits climate and climate research. And I think the reason why different, we can call them regimes, we can call them administrations or whatever, turn to anti-intellectualism, a lot of the time that's to do with a strong authoritarian streak. Right? I mean, the institutions that produce science or research in general doesn't have to be science. It can be in the social sciences or in the humanities. They are the sort of incubators for critical thinking, for challenging the policies and the status quo. And so when you have a government that does not like to be challenged in any way, one of the easiest ways to get rid of that is by hitting out against the institutions. And I think that's very much what we're seeing with the kind of the weaponized funding cuts that various institutions are having to deal with. I mean, Harvard and Columbia and so on are having to deal with at the moment. But I think what's really happened in America is that Trump's Republican Party has really managed to galvanize some underlying or perhaps long-dwelling resentments in their base. So the Make America Great Again movement, there might have been some a feeling that they were, I mean, we've spoken about this lots over the years, right, since 2016, but that, you know, they were people left behind, they were people in rural areas, they weren't necessarily benefiting from, in general, the real expansion of university education, and they somehow felt like they were being overlooked and not included in this progressive society. And I think what they're doing is that they're fanning the flames of this resentment, and that means that science, and also climate science, has become part of a culture war, right? So now we're not just, I mean, the attack on scientific institutions, yes, there's climate, but there's also race, there's gender, there's everything that kind of challenges these sort of traditional conservative views in American society. And so really now what we have is the base being just incredibly hostile towards scientists in general. I mean, also with COVID, right? So you have like health professionals and immunologists and people who were perhaps in the past less controversial. And yeah, that is also happening in climate. So I think to answer your question on why would they turn back on this thing that's worked out really well for them for a long time, is that is their means to power, right? The Trump Republican Party survives on the personality cult of Trump. And that means that you have to have a really inflamed base that is willing to not just defend him at all costs, but also agree with most of the things that he does. And so I think that is the reason it's because of power. It's not for any logical reason.
I mean, I know we have a very short session here, so I also have a rather sexy, husky voice at the moment. But living in Germany as I do, living in Berlin, of course, I was required to read things like the history of Adolf Hitler, and it strikes me that in the 1920s, the politicians ignored the rural areas where people were living, but the socialist National Socialists went to the rural areas where people felt they'd been left behind and neglected. and got their votes, which formed a base for a certain new politics in Germany. Anyway, let's not overdo this, but there's clearly things going on. Let me now turn to Sweta Chakraborty. She's a US-based behavioral scientist. She's a global risks expert and an advisory to the New York Academy of Sciences, if it still exists, Sweta. Tell me, is there a behavioral component to this? Does it echo a little to what perhaps Emilie from The Economist was saying? This kind of political polarization we see in the US being kind of now echoed in this kind of for against science mentality.
It's definitely explained by sociology. It's tribal. So once you pick a party, you fall into line with all aspects of that party. And I just want to say, my panelists have nailed it so far. This is really explaining what's going on and where we are right now. I might be the only American on this panel. Is that true? Are you worried about...
Are you really an American?
I have 2 passports until I decide not to anymore, and I've been told I may not be able to have 2 passports.
I will get you a British passport.
Okay,
it's
thank
okay.
you. If they want me.
Okay, I'm the only American on this panel with only an American passport, so I don't have options, and you know I like options. So I've been told to not be inflammatory on this trip. I'm going from here to Innovation Zero. I'm going to be speaking, and I've been told by very trusted, credible colleagues and peers and friends and family for different reasons to just keep my tenor reasonable. That ship has sailed. I was on the stage yesterday, and I was just getting myself fired up. I did some media today, and I am so over, because I'm so angry. I'm so angry. I was also part of the Kamala Harris campaign. This is not where I should be right now, right? We should have Kamala Harris in the White House, and I should have been supporting her on her climate policies and actions. Obviously, that's not where I am right now. I'm so angry, and for so many reasons, personally, professionally, and for this dismantling of American democracy in front of our faces and multilateral dismantling around the world. We are not just hurting Americans. Of course, that's happening. And like you're saying, NSF losing the funding, I mean, it's mind-blowing that the epicenter of the world's ingenuity, the engineering marvels that have come out of the United States, that have attracted the best and the brightest from around the world, there is a systematic dismantling of that very American ideal that's happening right in front of our faces. And it made me sad initially. It's made a lot of my friends and colleagues sad, especially those of us that were part of the Kamala Harris campaign. But it's really just made us so angry that the White House leader and clown is doing this right now in a world that is so desperately in need of the best and the brightest and federal funding to move ingenuity towards solving these global challenges like climate change, like infectious and emerging diseases. This is not the time that we do the opposite and go backwards to a bullshit, nostalgic American past that no longer exists. There's no such thing as manufacturing in the United States the way there was back in the day that the conservative right is holding on to. That ship has sailed as well, just like me getting back into the United States next week. So here we are. But anyway, I will leave it at that.
It would be a really good story,
I'm going to make
though.
you a Belgian citizen very soon, my dear. You can join me in Belgium.
No, so the UK ones are going much cheaper, so yeah, okay. So Bertrand Piccard must be known to millions of you in this room. There aren't millions in the room, but millions around the world, right? And this is also being broadcast live, so there probably are millions watching this. Of course, he was one of 2 amazing people who flew around the world in the Solar Impulse solar-powered aircraft. What a thing. And he's also also now has a new initiative called Climate Impulse, and a previous initiative, which is also still going, called Solar Impulse. And this is about bringing, through these 2 foundations, to the attention of the world, amazing solutions and technologies to tackle climate change. And what I wanted to ask you, Bertrand, is just very simply, do you fear that the shutting down or the cancelling or the big cuts in American science means the pipeline of science leading to technological developments that, you know, give us answers to some of the big problems we're facing in the world and solutions might start slowing down at the very time it needs to speed up?
Yes.
Okay, that was a short answer.
You know, everybody seems very surprised to see that science is under attack. But it has been like this for thousands of years. For thousands of years, the scientists were tortured, were burned by the church, who knew very well that the only way to keep the power was to have the population in the ignorance. And we had in France and in Europe the siècle des Lumières, the century of the light, which brought science, intellectual thinking, challenging the certitudes, fashionable again. So the question is not, why is science under attack? Because it has always been. The question is, why is it under attack now? Why is it under attack today? And what is our own responsibility in what is happening? Since more than 10 years, I'm saying that it is very dangerous to say that protection of the environment, climate action, ecology is expensive, is sacrificial, is detrimental to economic growth. We have today the responsibility of what is happening. The people who want profit, who want growth, who want comfort, who want mobility, hate ecology because of the message that ecology has brought for years. People don't want to make a sacrifice. People want to have an easy life. And today, we had the wrong narrative that explains why the people who don't want to make a sacrifice, who don't want to pay money for the environment, are making the counterattack. And they are now wiping out everything that deals with ecology and climate action, because we had the wrong narrative. So today, the question, of course, is how to make science great again. But the other question is how to make climate action sexy again, fashionable again. And this is why we need another narrative. And at the Solar Impulse Foundation that you mentioned, we have worked on identifying solutions that exist today that are economically profitable, that create jobs, that can be used by the industry, that are really interesting and attractive for finance, and that also protect the environment. And I have always kept in mind this idea, how can I speak to a climate negationist? How can I speak to him? I cannot prove him that there is too much CO2. He doesn't care. He doesn't understand that it's human-made. Okay, so let's tell him that renewable energies are cheaper than gas, oil, and coal. Let's explain that when you go on efficient solutions, you waste less, but also less money, and your profit margin is higher. You can explain that if you go in circularity, you create more jobs, you make more money, you develop new business opportunities. And I think this type of narrative is what can really help to keep the economy of a big country interested by all the opportunities that we have. You know, this is a way to stop speaking of decarbonization, for example, and speak about modernization. If you modernize the world will have cheaper sources of clean energy. It will be efficient. It will not have all the outdated industrial processes, thermal engines, and all that. And if you modernize, then you have everybody in favor of modernization. And decarbonization will become the logical consequence of modernization. And this is something we have to keep in mind. Today, it is finished to speak about degrowth. It's finished to speak about expensive ecology. We are harming our cause when we're doing that. We are destroying our action. And when we understand that, then we can speak to the climate change deniers and tell them, I'm going to talk to you without mentioning climate, without mentioning environment, without mentioning ecology. But I will mention the clean energies that are cheaper. I will mention energy efficiency, circularity, recycling, all these industrial processes that make sense today. And then I think we can reconcile the two extremes, and not before.
Okay, thank you, Bertrand. Let's turn to Greg de Temmerman. He's a physicist, an associate researcher at Mines Paris Tech PSL, and co-head of the Quadrature Foundation in London. Science is always coming up with new things, right? Science can come up with dangerous things like the spread of diseases, but then we can act on them. But then sometimes science illuminates something really extraordinary. And in the case of climate change, in the last 20 years, it's been illuminating the fact that half of climate change are so-called superpollutants. Methane, fluorinated gases and others, that could, if we act very quickly, put an emergency brake on the growing global warming. Tell us how you feel about cancelling science and new science informing action like the superpollutants, because it's an amazing story. And what is the role of philanthropy, Greg, in this really tricky moment?
That's an interesting question. I think, first of all, everything we know about climate and the environment is about decades of research, right? It's accumulation of knowledge, it's testing a hypothesis, it's kind of getting wrong and we're getting back into the right direction. And I think it's important because as long as you stop or pause research, it's not only a 2-year blip or a 4-year blip, it's a big infrastructure that you are actually damaging. I think you mentioned it, databases. I mean, things which are not sexy and perhaps people don't think about when we think about science, infrastructure, databases, monitoring, the fact that we are actually able to have satellites in space, monitoring the planet basically and telling us what's going on with oceans, what's going on with gases and so on. This is what is at stake right now, and this is extremely expensive because it's decades of investments. So science is why we know climate is changing. Science has been used by oil companies and then hidden for decades because they knew climate was changing and they didn't want it to actually be public, right? So it's important there. And this is also how we can devise all the solutions we need. Bertrand mentioned it. I mean, it's decades of research and innovation. Now, what we know, for example, we are right now at the time where we can monitor methane. Methane is 1/3 of the total warming we are observing right now. We all talk about CO2. CO2 is important. On the long run, CO2 is what wins everything. But right now, 1/3 of the global warming is caused by methane. Methane is caused by enteric emissions, so cows, basically. 25% of it is oil and gas. We now finally have tools to actually being able to hold accountable oil and gas companies for leaks in pipelines. Leaks which are costing absolutely nothing to be fixed, right? Just because people don't give a damn about that. Now you're cutting infrastructure, which means you're not able to see that anymore. And this is satellites, which have been developed, again, about decades of research. So just important to realize all of that. And if you shut them down, it takes a long time to actually restart this infrastructure. Now, research, in my view, should be funded by states because this is a public good, right? And it has to be available to most people. Now, we are a foundation, we are philanthropy, so right now, our mailboxes, and some of my colleagues are here, our mailboxes are just being flooded by people asking us to actually help, and we can and we try, but our budget is just a small drop in the ocean. So right now, we are even trying to understand what's going on in the US and what kind of critical infrastructure we can help safeguard and then try to see what else can be done. And I think this initiative is very interesting because I think it's also an opportunity now to perhaps gear up research in the UK and Europe. I'll make the distinction, sorry. But also in other countries, right? I mean, it's a time where governments have to step up because they should be convinced that science is important and they should put enough money onto the table to actually safeguard infrastructure, but also perhaps redirect science and make it even more useful for society. So philanthropy has a role to play. But I think it's just bridging a gap which is gigantic. And I don't know if people realize in this room how much we are going to lose in the science infrastructure. It's a bloodbath right now. And these are billions of dollars per year which are being cut. Nobody except a country can actually step up and actually try and safeguard some of that.
It's a very interesting perspective. Thank you very much indeed, Greg. One last final speaker, and then we just might have a short bit of time for a general chat, if our dear colleagues on the tech crew over there allow us. No, they're all having their lunch. Okay, good. Last but not least, Johan Falk. Johan is the head and co-founder of the Exponential Roadmap Initiative. The initiative unites companies that are innovators, disruptors, transformers to drive exponential action to halve emissions by 2030, in line with the climate science. So Johan, briefly, how are these companies responding to the current climate challenges? I think that's a polite thing to say, current climate challenges, these acute disruptions going on right now. And how are you trying to support them?
I would say the companies we work with on the front line, they are staying on the course. And that, I think, is incredibly important. Stay on course. They are delivering tremendous results as well in terms of driving the transformation through the value chains, both the energy transformation, the material transformation. Where we need to support the companies is to communicate the strong results, what they're doing, that they stay absolutely committed to the 1.5 ambition to science, and that it makes perfectly business sense, that it's a way to build business advantage, to also inspire all other companies. So here we have a lot of work to do. Companies cannot get silent, but they have to work and communicate together to make people also understand that progress is happening and businesses stay on course.
And secondly, you're launching something new called the Exponential Solutions Movement. Can you explain why this is needed? Yeah, was it it was the Exponential Solutions Movement, Sandrine?
It's also connected to what Bertrand said. All the focus so far, or most of the focus, has been on the down curves, basically how the big companies are cutting emissions. And the Science-Based Target Initiative is incredibly important to build up thousands of companies setting science-aligned targets, how to decarbonize their value chains. However, to shift out the fossil economy, a key point is to scale up the solutions exponentially, so we can shift out the old energy, the fossil energy system, the linear economy, moving to a circular economy, moving to regenerative agriculture, close to nature forestry, and so on. We already did the first Exponential Roadmap 2018, showing that we had solutions to take us to the first halving. I would say that we have the solutions to take us even to the second and the third halving. We might be close to bending the curve, but we do need to do much, much more now on accelerating the solutions, which will take us to much modern economy, a wealthier economy, and driving both the economy and wealth and new jobs, and connect that with business opportunities.
So, we've heard from everybody, and I just think that's rather an important point that Johan says. He said en passant, we have the solutions for the first halving of greenhouse gases in line with the science, and maybe for the next halving and the next halving. So is this why this attack on science by perhaps many of the businesses who funded Donald Trump's, very publicly funded Donald Trump's second term, suddenly start making sense to those that want to keep their business models going for another 1,000 years?
Absolutely. This has never been an issue about solutions. And we keep on focusing on technology as if technology is going to solve everything. It won't, because we haven't fundamentally changed the systems. The drivers behind our economy are shareholder value. It's all about profit. Right now I talk about the 3 M's: money, materials, and molecules. It's all linked to the AI revolution. The fact of the matter is, why is it that our fossil energy companies have pulled out of their net zero requirements, because they know that with AI, we need every possible energy, whether electrons or molecules, and whether they're polluting or not. We have to understand the onslaught that we are living right now in terms of our clean revolution versus their AI revolution. And they will do everything to make sure that we do not move forward, including canceling the science, canceling the knowledge, undermining every single company that's doing the right thing. And the biggest issue is they've bought out our governments too. So this is why I really want to be clear. When we leave this room, we cannot leave inactive. Exactly as Sweta says, because her ass is on the line when she goes back to the States. And so is mine, by the way, because I'm obviously pretty blacklisted as well. There are, just 2 days ago, 2 researchers from France were stopped as they tried to get into the United States and sent back. This is going to happen time and time again. We have to wake up. We have to not only make science great again, but humanity great again. And that's our problem.
I think we can just have another 4 or 5 minutes. So first, Dr.
Just one word, because there is one country where science is really leading. It's in China. And when you visit labs in China, you see also useless science being done, not always science for profit. And they are really having the idea that the future is in science. So we are facing a real big crisis of civilization.
And of course, China just putting down their new climate action plan, which seems to be quite ambitious. So maybe they might fill the vacuum there a little bit. Greg.
I just wanted to come back on one point on climate, because one might wonder why we need more climate science, right? And we know climate is changing, we know why, but something we haven't talked about here is we need to adapt to a changing world, a world which is changing extremely quickly. And if anything, one thing which is not happening enough is us to actually looking at what does it mean to be resilient in 30, 50, 100 years in a climate which is 2 to 3 degrees warmer. And there is a whole lot of science there just to make sure we understand a bit better what the projections are. And we designed the solution for that, because we have the solutions for decarbonizing, most of them. Adapting to a 3-degree world is an interesting challenge for us here. Just think about all the countries which need to develop at the same time, because climate change is by nature an unfair thing. The least responsible are going to be the people who are going to suffer the most, and science is needed to actually get there.
Good point. Bertrand.
I find it very interesting what you said, Sandrine, the fight between climate and artificial intelligence. But I don't think it's a real fight if we are clever. If we speak about efficiency, today, all the cities of the world have to produce hot water, and half of them have to produce heat to heat the buildings. The data centers produce only one thing with the energy you put in. It's heat. Heat. Data, it's nothing. It's heat. Which means that if you put the data centers close to the cities, you don't increase the quantity of energy that you need in the world. You just use the energy first for the data center, and then you use the heat for the city. That's called efficiency. And it is twice cheaper than what we do today. Today we pay the energy for the data center and we pay the energy to heat the city. It's ridiculous. You can use the same energy twice. It's half of the cost for each party. But we don't do it. So it's just complete stupidity. And this is where I say that we have to come back to efficiency. If we come back to efficiency and we can do more with less resources, there is no fight anymore between climate action, industry, economy, finance, and AI.
Thank you very much. I can see that Sandrine is picking up her lance right now to take on the fight. But we may not have time for that, Sandrine, but let's see. Let's ask Sweta.
Really quickly on China. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Villar Summit in Villar, Switzerland, this was just a few months, or last month, that they hosted their third annual meeting of global philanthropists. And I see some of you in the audience who are definitely there. And so you had major recipients of global philanthropy, like Conservation International, like the Nature Conservancy, which are headquartered in the United States, would traditionally be receiving that type of funding. But there was a very clear shift of moving funding from US-based nonprofits to China. And that shift is extremely telling, that nonprofits in China are actually potentially more impactful than recipients out of the United States, especially in this new administration. So this is a real movement that's happening.
So we're going to come very much to the close here, with especially my voice at the moment. I just want to say one thing by Bertrand. Science has now led to engineering, which has now got a generation of industrial heat pumps that are hitting 250 degrees, hitting 300 degrees. This is a revolution through science and engineering, and they're just about to come onto the market. There's so much good stuff. So I'm just echoing what you said. This is energy saving
Can I just say, though, that we all, that's why I'm saying, the technology is there, the smarts are there. What's the problem? The greed, the money, the profit. We have lost sense. That's why I say we need to make science great again, but we need to make humanity great again. What's our legacy as human beings on this planet? We've lost sense. Even research is all driven by money. We have to come back to money for whom? Research for what? That is fundamental.
Bertrand, if you've got a quick point, fire away.
Human nature is about short-term personal interest and greed. I think this is human nature in general, not us particular, but in general. So we have to take this into consideration. We cannot fight human nature and think everybody should be respectful and compassionate in one click. So if we can give more money to the people who are greedy, thanks to the solutions that can protect the environment in an economically profitable way, let's do it. Let's create jobs. Let's make money. Let's stop to believe that on one side there is the expensive ecology and on the other side you have the polluting industry. It's not like this anymore. It was like this, but not anymore.
It's now, the expensive fossil fuels and the cheap renewable energy. That's great.
Well, now you have profitable ecology and you can have clean industry. And the proof is what we have behind us here at ChangeNOW. But the people who should know about it are not here. We're all convinced of that. So the job doesn't start with the beginning of ChangeNOW. It starts when we end the weekend here, we go back home, we give interviews, we meet people, we make advocacy, and we have to tell about the solutions that exist, because most of the people don't know that these solutions exist. And the word solution and the word efficiency is what we need to spread everywhere. And the question of science will follow.
I've got you. I think we've got you there. All right. Look, Ingmar, could you just come and try and just wrap this thing up quickly? Because I'm sure these guys want a cup of coffee over there.
I can, and I want to make it quick. Bertrand, you're absolutely right. And the reason why We Do Not Time exists is that we are broadcasting what's happening from ChangeNOW exactly right now to the people not in the room. They need to hear it. They are the ones needing to learn about all the solutions. I would also like to pick up another thing discussed here and on other stages. Yes, we need sustainable solution sexy, and we need them to be profitable. But what we need at most is to not stay silent. We're fighting for our future. I don't care if it's sexy or profitable. I want to survive, and I think you too will. And there's a very interesting study, science-based study in UK, published in The Guardian recently, where they have asked the population if they want to act more on the climate. And everyone
Sorry,
asks,
can
yes.
you fix this mic? Can you fix this mic?
You don't hear me?
All right.
You don't hear me?
It's okay.
A majority said, yes, we want to act on the climate crisis. But a majority also thought that their neighbors didn't want stronger climate action. That's why they're not acting. That's why they're not speaking up, because they think everyone else are not speaking up. So put on those hats. Don't be green and nice. Be red and mean and speak up. Because if we don't speak up now, there will be no future where we can speak up. That's important. And I would like to end with this. This is a meeting in Mar-a-Lago before the US election. Donald Trump invited all his friends in the fossil fuel industry. He had one message. Give me $1 billion and I will win the US election and I will cancel climate science and policy. And he did. What the fuck? Why are we not doing the same? I open with my children. Shouldn't we raise money for them and everyone else, children in here and everyone here as well? It's our future. Let's mobilize, not work in silos. And this is important. When truth becomes a threat, science becomes resistance. So join us. Scan that QR code, put on those caps. You can donate some money and you get some caps, but I will do what a drug dealer do now. If I give away some for free, I will create a demand for more. So here you go.
Okay. Yes, they could be. So I want to...
so scan the code, and thanks to all the great people on stage.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody who's been on stage. I thought it was very interesting. And Dr. Triller, especially to you, because you were speaking almost in a slightly different area, but actually contributed as well to the overall dialogue. And so thank you very much. Thank you, Emilie, for coming on. I hope your friends at The Economist are still going to love you after being on the show. And Sandrine, with your powerful voice, Bertrand, with your very powerful voice. Greg, somebody new I've met, but a great speaker and very articulate. Thank you so much. Shutter as well. And Johan with his impeccable analysis of the company. So thanks very much indeed, everyone, for being here.